Hi, folks. Master Flowers here again. This video segment is going to be about a couple of links. One is a link to the Harry Fox investigation for fraud, and the other is a link to a $1.8 billion class action lawsuit against Spotify for not paying artist royalties. This whole business with the link to the Harry Fox investigation boils down to this. They have certain people that are fraudulently using signatures as licensees, and they are signing notice of intent to take your copyright, basically, and steal your song, and then use it for profiting any way that they want to. And some of the signatures of the licensees do not even work for the company anymore, and haven't for maybe 6 months prior to these notice of intents going out. And so this is absolute fraud. This is just absolute total fraud. In addition to having bad signatures, there's another thing that's taking place here too, and that would be the notice of intent that they use is problematic, because what the problem is, and precisely so, is that they are not properly licensing these songs. To properly license them, payment has to be made in conjunction with serving you with the notice of intent. The song has to be identified properly. The musicians, the recording studio, everything needs to be documented, and they need to tell you how many copies they're planning to distribute. And it makes a big difference. 1 3-minute song, 10,000 copies being distributed equates to $910 statutory fees. In no place in the whole Harry Fox business does it give you an accounting of that. It's just absolute improper to try to apply for the license, the compulsory license, when they do not provide you with the payment, when they don't provide you with the number of copies being distributed, and when they don't even properly identify the song. I've had these clowns tell me that the song they're doing is E.T. E.T. Well, guess what? I don't have a song called E.T. I don't have a record album called E.T. And I really resent the fact that they're trying to put a compulsory license on me when they don't even reveal what the hell song it is that they're stealing. Now let's talk about the Spotify $1.8 billion class action lawsuits. If you were to Google the Spotify class action lawsuits or lawsuits filed against Spotify, you're going to come up with a very large list. A very, very large list. Now, among the ones that are listed is one in particular from Wixen Music versus Spotify, and it's a class action lawsuit for $1.8 billion that represents a goodly number of well-known artists. And what it is for non-payment of artist royalties. Well, this goes to pattern, because when they serve me up with a notice of intent to impose a compulsory license so that they can effectively take my song, record my song, post it all over the internet, claim it as an original work, and not pay me 1 penny in royalties. I can see why Spotify has so many claims against it that are going to go to court. And you would think that any company that has a lawsuit pending against them for $1.8 billion, you would think they'd clean up their act and stop doing all this song stealing. But they take the opposite approach. What they do is they double and triple their efforts to go faster and faster, stealing more songs much faster than you can believe. Now, I have a problem with that because my only recourse comes from the business of having to hire an attorney. Now, who are these people that are signing as licensees for the Spotify Harry Fox conspiracy to steal songs? One of them is Adam Parnas. I see by my count that he has stolen or served me up with 6 different compulsory notice of compulsory license. Annika Goldman has done 4 of them, and Stefan Biome has done 12 of them. Now, I said I had 57 songs stolen, but those numbers right there don't add up to 57. Here's what happens. Instead of properly identifying the song that they're stealing, they identified the entire album that may have 9, 10, 12 songs on it. So they're being elusive. They're not really identifying what it is they're doing. They're not identifying how many copies they intend to distribute. And the whole idea of paying a royalty is based on how long is a song? 3-minute song, let's say, for an example. Okay, how many copies do they want to distribute? For this example, let's say 10,000. Okay, now they're planning on selling 10,000 copies of my song. All righty. That equates to $910 for a 3-minute song. A 6-minute song, double that fee. Or, on the other hand, if instead of 10,000 copies, they wanted to do 20,000 copies, that doubles the royalty that is due to be paid. These people haven't paid me 1 penny in royalties at all. They refuse to reply to any inquiries I make. My only recourse is to hire a copyright attorney and sue them. Well, obviously, if they've got tons of lawsuits going against them, including one for $1.8 billion, the problem is that they obviously have a huge army of attorneys to protect their interests and do everything possible to stall any lawsuit or postpone court hearings or anything like that. And they're trying to steal as fast as they can. Now, Spotify recently went public with an IPO, initial public offering for the sale of stock. I believe, right down to my core, that the entire filing process through the SEC was fraudulent. And I'll tell you why. Prior to them going public, if you Google it, you'll find that the company had a supposed value of roughly $12 billion. And right after the initial public offering, the first day they started selling stocks, the company was valued at over $30 billion. How did they do that? How did they increase the value from $12 billion to $30 billion if it wasn't total fraud? Well, here's how it works. They go to the Library of Congress, they steal your songs, as many as they possibly can. They serve you up with those notice of intent to impose a compulsory license to take your song and distribute it. They refuse to tell you how many copies are being distributed. They don't even identify the song properly, so I've got several songs that they put initials to that do not correspond to any of my songs or album titles. And they do not pay you. Now, what does this mean? It means that they've got business going across their books, showing that they are representing an army of artists all over the world who desire to do your songs and do so for their own profit and gain and claim the song as an original. And they just have absolutely zero accountability for it. They go ahead and steal your song, and they're making money off of it. But in their bank account, since they don't pay their artists the royalties that are due to them, why, they've got a huge bank account. So it looks like they're liquid. Now, the SEC obviously did not look into this, because had they looked into it, they would realize that a company doesn't go within a period of 2 months with a value of $12,000 and balloon it up to 30 billion, going from $12 billion to $30 billion in value in a couple of months period of time. So I've reported to the SEC that I think this was total fraud and that they should not have given them a license to sell stock publicly, and that because they went ahead and now have sold public stock, I think that ought to be torn down, ripped up, burned in an incinerator, and have their vote canceled entirely, because it was all fraud. You can't tell me that those people are operating on the up and up when they are stealing people's songs like mine, 57 of them. And what they may retort about that is the artist, when you do that notice of intent to obtain a compulsory license, it does not lock the artist in to having to do your song. So if they don't elect to go ahead and do it, then they owe you nothing. And this is probably why they think they're going to get away with not paying. But look at it this way. 57 out of 57 songs that have been stolen from me, every single one of them has not paid me one dime, not one penny, not one red cent. And my concern would be that defies the laws of all logic. There has to be somebody who has done my song and published it. And indeed, when I did a search on the net, I found my songs posted on different websites, for sale, distributed, and so therefore I know for a fact that payment of royalties is due to me, and they refuse to reply to my inquiries about how much they owe, how they calculated it, or any other thing. These people are total fraud. And the people that are perpetrating this at the Spotify as signing as licensees are Adam Parnas, Annika Goldman, and Stefan Biome. As far as I'm concerned, they're a bunch of crooks that need to be tarred and feathered and run out of town on a rail. And I think that my constitutional rights are being crapped on by these renegades that go ahead and think it's okay to steal somebody else's music. I want to go on record and state that the reason that I have created 57 record albums was with the idea of trying to do some charity fundraising for St. Jude's Research Hospital for Children. And when I contacted Adam Parnas and the other two clowns, I informed them that they were stealing songs that were intended to help little sick kids with cancer for charity, and that under no circumstances did I compose those songs so that a bunch of low-life, bottom-feeding, parasitical thieves could come along, steal my song, not pay me any royalties, and profit off of them. And yet I have found my songs posted on the internet, and they are absolutely, unequivocally making profits off of me, although it was my copyright. They have absolutely zero legal claim because everything they've done was fraudulent. And my only recourse is to hire an attorney. That is absolute nonsense. My copyright should protect me better than that. But instead of the Office of Copyright protecting me from people like them, they cater to them. They endow them with certain inalienable rights that it is their duty to steal songs from me, whether or not I wrote them for charity or for my own personal use. I think they're just bottom feeders and lowlifes, and they need to be shut down. I think that it is a breach of my constitutional rights for anyone to be able to go in the back door, use a loophole in the copyright law to totally short circuit the spirit and the intent and the meaning of what a copyright is supposed to be. To me, if I copyright something, I'm supposed to be protected. But my experience is the minute I filed copyright, then look what happens. All of a sudden, I get all these notice of intent to impose a compulsory license against me so that someone else can profit from my work. And guess what? I don't want those people doing my songs. I wouldn't have anybody, I wouldn't give them permission to do anything with my songs. And if I ever did, first of all, I'd want to meet them personally. I'd want to interview them. I'd want to find out if I thought they were qualified to do a good job. And most of all, I would argue that the payment of a 3-minute song for 10,000 copies at $910, I would say they're going to make a whole lot more money than that $910 by selling 10,000 copies. If they sell 10,000 copies of my song at $1 a piece, they're going to make $10,000. But since they don't declare how many copies they're going to do, it could be 100,000 or it could be 1 million. So let's suppose for a royalty that is supposed to be $910, but they make maybe $1 million off of the sale of doing my song, I would argue that I would have to have at least 50% of that money. And I would also demand that half of what their half is should be paid to the St. Jude's Research Hospital for Children. And they would still come out smelling like a rose because they didn't have to write the song. I did. They didn't copyright the song. I did. It's mine. It's mine to say who, what, where, why, and when as to what happens to my song. And for them to come in and turn my constitutional rights on its head is absolutely unforgivable. I think that Congress ought to be stripped of all their jobs, given their pink slips, kick them to the curb, and send them home and put a whole bunch of new people in Congress, because anybody that would create this aspect of the copyright law where somebody else can come in and steal your song, not be held accountable for anything, profit by it, and give you nothing at all, that's totally shitting all over my constitutional rights. And I think that the government ought to be taking a look at this. And it's just a shame that I have written numerous senators, government agencies, law enforcement agencies, and not one of them would take a look at this documentation and work at fixing it. So that's the end of this video. Thank you for watching.